We are on with Martha Hartney, who has written this great article about dealing with trauma. And Martha, you're joining us from, are you in Colorado right now, like Boulder area, right?
Yeah, I'm in Boulder, yes.
Very nice. And so tell me a little bit about your article. And by the way, you should check it out. It's in the latest issue of Legacy Arts magazine, and she goes through how ancestral healing and how we all hold on to these traumas. And can you tell me a little bit about how you got into this and what brought you to doing this work?
Yeah, actually, well, the idea of intergenerational trauma has been kind of present to me in sort of a background sort of way pretty much all my life. And I didn't really quite grasp it until I started working as an estate planner and recognized that the idea of intergenerational trauma is ubiquitous. You know, it really is in everyone's life in some form or another. There really isn't any one of us that has been spared the impact of intergenerational trauma. You know, whether we come from a lineage of color or are white and Caucasian, you know, we all kind of are the coalescing of many layers, many generations of things happening to and by our ancestors. And you know, I didn't really have a real feel for my own ancestry, and I thought I was really the only one, and that, you know, everybody else really had a clear picture of where they came from and who they belonged to and what nationality and what culture. And actually what I discovered in the last 10 years is that's not true. The vast majority of Americans have no real connection to where we came from and all that comes with that. And so we're sort of divided from this sense of belonging, kind of, or afloat or adrift in the milieu of humanity, particularly as Americans. You know, it's very different than other cultures where they have some sense of where they come from. You know, if you come from Korea, you kind of understand what that means. If you come from Italy, you kind of understand what that means. But it's not the case in the United States. So we're not only like subjected to this idea of intergenerational trauma, we also don't have the benefit of the richness of a culture that supports us in working through some of that.
Absolutely. So that's interesting. So what have you found about, you know, knowing about your past or knowing about these sort of ancestral connections? How does that help you with your future or making decisions, you know, now or in the future?
Well, some of it's a little esoteric. You know, what I find is like, and I think actually Brene Brown talks about this a lot in her work with respect to the idea of belonging and wholeheartedness. And that when we feel like we belong to someone and something, we actually just feel stronger in our life and more able to cope with what life brings us. But if we don't feel like we have anything like kind of backing us up in terms of, you know, the ones that we love and our family members and even beyond just our immediate family members, you know, a lineage of people behind us who really want, you know, their descendants to succeed. If we don't have that sensation of the energetic backing of our ancestry, we can really withhold a lot in our life decisions. We can kind of hold back and not live the fullest life that we're really entitled to live.
Yeah,
So,
it's almost like living in a vacuum or something.
mm-hmm.
And yeah, that's interesting. So do you think that's like a major inhibitor to people having deep conversations or really expressing, you know, their feelings?
Yeah, I do. Well, that's actually more of the shadow of the traumatic aspect of intergenerational trauma is we don't want to talk about what is in our past, what secrets are back there, what things didn't go right. You know, what did our ancestors participate in or do that caused harm to self or other? So there's a lot of secrecy and, you know, we don't talk about that kind of thing whenever we talk about our lineage. And yet those are the very things that we actually need to talk about. You know, the passed on heritage of, say, alcoholism or abuse or neglect or loneliness or depression. You know, those are the things we actually really need to like open up and talk about and feel so that we can heal. You know, the secrecy part, it's like, we don't talk about that kind of thing in this family, or we don't want that known out in the world about our family, actually just serves to exacerbate and to perpetuate what we're trying to heal. Yeah, so you know, getting people freed up to talk about, you know, what happened a generation ago or 2 generations ago, to the degree that they know it and understand it, is one thing. And then there's, you know, lineage after lineage after lineage of, you know, a lot of pain and suffering that we carry with us, you know, into, you know, further generations. There's something that I recently begun to feel into, and that's the idea that there is no away. Just like in trash, you know, people say there is no away on this planet. There is no away in our families. Now, we may have a black sheep who's gone off and like nobody's heard from them for 5, 10, 20 years. That person still exists. That person's soul still carries a burden for our family. And they're not away. They're in that energetic spiritual sense. They're just carrying something we don't want to look at. So we really owe it to ourselves and to our children and to our children's children to constantly be looking for and trying to heal, you know, those parts that are not, they're never fully away, and bring them back in, you know, and accept the truth, give them a place in our heart, give a place in our lives, in our soul.
Now, this is so interesting that you came at this, or you kind of discovered this through talking with people through your practice, right? Through estate planning, which is traditionally pretty, I guess, official, right? Like you're just talking about estate documents and things. And I remember having a conversation with you a few years ago where you said that your favorite part was kind of having these legacy type conversations with your clients. And so you were really, you know, from my perspective, being so innovative in that industry, just because not a lot of estate planning attorneys will do that.
No.
At all.
Yeah,
So it's
not at all.
very,
Yeah.
very cool. So how do you personally work with clients in helping them to either uncover these traumas or kind of work through it?
But, you know, I never force anything. You know, if a client is not in a place where they actually want to have, you know, something opened up for them to consider, you know, I don't push. But the vast majority of people that I work with actually do have a deep thirst to know their own lineage, you know, what's behind them, and actually really leave a good legacy for their children and the descendants to come, you know, to really take their place as someone who is worthy of being descended from. So that thirst, you know, in the practice that I've developed over these years, helps to nourish that desire to be a good ancestor and to pass on you know, what we know about life and what we've learned. You know, we're given circumstances with which to work in our lives, and it's up to us with what we're going to do with it, and that's what we turn around and leave behind. People are actually really naturally inclined to know that at some deep level. And just to hear their attorney speak to that helps people like, oh, that's what I've been looking for. That's the thing I've been trying to understand about how I want to live, that I haven't been able to put my finger on. Because yes, attorneys don't really have that language as a whole, which is a shame, you know, because lawyers tend to be, you know, sort of the first responder when people are considering their death.
Yep.
And the truth, the utter and inevitable and powerful and terrifying truth that we're going to die. Lawyers are the ones who people call first. So it's unfortunate that my own profession doesn't really have good language and a deep understanding of what's actually happening here for people. So that's kind of part of what I want to see change in my own industry, is lawyers understand what they're dealing with is not monetary legacy. It's a deep intergenerational, both trauma and like all the good works that come from working out our traumas. You know, that gets passed on too.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and you talk about having sort of this concept. I think you're right. Like when you lose your culture, you lose your background, you kind of lose those milestones of how you go through life, or what it even means to like mature and grow up and, you know, evolve and leave behind this legacy. So it's so valuable.
Yeah. We've reduced a lot of what we think of as legacy down to money. When in most cultures, that's not what it's about at all. You know, a legacy is like who you are and what you've learned and what you know about life, that we get to share with our family.
Absolutely. Well, I love it. Thank you so much. And I love your article too. Make sure to check out her article. And it you know, touches on these concepts and ancestral traumas and kind of how you go through that process of figuring out what they are and evolving, you know, forward. And how do people find out about you, like your practice or what you're doing?
Well, my law practice website is online. It's hartneylaw.com, HARTNEYLAW.com. And I do have a private practice that does work with intergenerational trauma and trying to work some of that out at the energetic, emotional, spiritual levels. And that website is called theheartofthematter.com. And heart is spelled HART, which is my last name. So people can go check that out. And for that, I am available outside of the bounds of Colorado. As a lawyer, I can only really practice inside of Colorado. So anybody wants to check that out, you know, I'd be willing to take a call. So
sounds good. Good. Well, it's always such a pleasure talking with you and seeing you. And I love to hear, I mean, just these innovative things that you're doing and learning and helping, you know, people through.
Yeah. I have a lot of great teachers.
Yeah.
A lot of greatness. Yeah.
Excellent. Well, good. Well, thank you so much. And thanks for being a contributor to this, this issue of Legacy Arts Magazine.
You're welcome. Always a pleasure. Thanks, Laura.
Thank you.
Yeah.
If you're interested in passing your non-financial assets like your wisdom, your values, and your beliefs to your family and leaving a great impact on the world, make sure to grab a free subscription to our online magazine. Go to legacyartsmagazine.com and you'll see it there. In every issue, we interview fascinating people about their legacies, from Fortune 500 CEOs to artists to philanthropic leaders to best-selling authors. We also offer tips, guidance, and strategies for developing an excellent legacy of your own.